Hey, in this video I'm going to review the book The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. This book is very popular among startups and product people. And Eric Ries has a background as a tech entrepreneur and also a consultant for other startups in the Bay Area. But let's go through what are the key takeouts that I have gotten from this book. So first one, the book takes a lot of inspiration from Toyota's lean manufacturing playbook. So he's quoted many times the ways of working within Toyota that got it to be the biggest car manufacturer in the world. One of the main takeouts for me in this book is when he talks about experimentation. Experimentation is key for you to make sure that you are actually building something that your customers need. You have to take many experiments and test it with customers to make sure that what you're building is what they need. But just experimenting for the sake of experimenting is not enough. You have to have validated learning, which is probably the second key takeout for me. You have to not just have a learning that maybe my test was wrong or right, that's just a learning. He talks a lot about validated learning, meaning that you are able to learn something and verify it with actual data and relevant data that is going to impact and improve and grow your product and business. Not just focusing on vanity metrics that are not necessarily going to have any return or impact on your business. The next key takeout that I have from this book, and probably the most popular one in this book, is the concept of an MVP, a minimum viable product. Although many people love to talk about nowadays a minimum lovable product. And my takeout here is that Eric Ries is going for how can you actually build those prototypes that help you validate your ideas and the concepts that you have and the problems that you're defining, potentially also the solution that you're defining with those customers that you are targeting. What you don't want to build is something that is too big, that is going to take you too time. You just want to build something that is just basically a framework that is going to help you validate, remember, validated learning, the assumptions that you had when you started building the prototype, and also how you're going to build a business. If you like this kind of content, please give it a like. It helps YouTube recommending this video to other people. The idea with an MVP, and this is something that probably many people fail to understand even nowadays, is that an MVP has to be very small in scope. It has to be very bare bones, and it has to take very little time or as little as possible to develop. Building a product that it takes you a year to build, that's not an MVP. And you could even argue that something that takes you many months to build, is it an MVP or not? Eric Ries also talks a lot about entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. When he talks about entrepreneurs, obviously he's a CEO, founder of a tech startup. When he talks about entrepreneurs, usually these are people that are tasked within a corporation or a bigger company to develop a new product and find a problem, build a solution and an audience for that problem. Usually the problems that these two types of people are going to have are quite similar, although there's going to be some differences on the ways that they work and sometimes on the problems that they have. Obviously, somebody working as an entrepreneur within a corporation is going to have the backing up of that corporation, which means that it's rarely going to run out of funding, or potentially it's going to run out of funding, but probably it's not going to run out of a job. Whereas in the case of the entrepreneur, it is a very real risk that your job is on the line. The next one is the importance of early adopters. When you're building MVPs, when you're starting a company, when you're starting a product, it's very important that you have those early adopters that are going to start using your product and give you the first feedback to understand which direction you have to take next your product. And this direction can align with your vision or it cannot. Sometimes you will have to change. This takes me to the next point. Do you pivot or do you persevere? Tech startups are facing pretty much all the time the dilemma of can they continue in a certain direction or do they have to change directions? Typically, the adoption of the product is going to be relatively slow, which means that it's difficult to understand if you're going sometimes in the correct direction or not. So do you have to persevere in the direction that you're going or do you have to pivot? Sometimes it's going to be very obvious that a product has no traction whatsoever and the feedback from their customers is already telling you that no, this is not what they want, this is not something that they need or they would ever use. So then you probably are getting a quite clear message that this is not the right direction. And this is the funny thing. It might be that this is not the right direction for the people that you're interviewing, but potentially for other people, it could be the right direction. So sometimes it's very difficult to make that choice of am I in the right track or am I not? He also talks about the differences between product optimizations versus building new products in tech startups. Established companies with established products typically are going to concentrate more on product optimization, meaning that they're going to look into how can I make my product more appealing to my current audience or potentially expand this product to new audiences that are not using my product at this point. Whereas a startup is going to concentrate on disruption and try to find that product that has no niche at this moment and try to find an actual product market fit. Another point that he talks a lot is the difference between vanity metrics and actionable metrics. Vanity metrics are going to be metrics that potentially look really good, they are growing over time, but they are not metrics that are going to define the success of your business. Actionable metrics, on the other hand, are going to be metrics that will help you define the success of the business. And if these are not being validated, then you potentially are not going in the correct path. A good example of this are the R metrics, which I think that are not covered in the book, and I'm not sure even if they were defined after the book was released. Eric Ries also talks a lot about the 5 Whys framework. The 5 Whys framework is designed to try to figure out and understand properly and deeply a problem that you have faced, even to the point of asking up to 5 times why, trying to dig in more information about what the problem and the root cause of a problem is. But as many other things out there, this kind of framework can be misused and sometimes it can end up being a blame game. People go into these exercises with a proactive mentality to try to identify the problem and not trying to blame each other. Eric Ries also talks about the engines of growth and describes them as the different ways that you can actually grow your product and your audience. He also talks a lot about cross-functional teams, being cross-functional, working across different disciplines and making sure that you don't follow a waterfall process, but more like you work together, trying to release a problem and try to identify those problems from the get-go and not try to work in isolation. And this applies to pretty much everybody. Eric Ries also talks about the build, measure, learn framework, where you actually want to make sure that you are always operating in this cycle where you first build something small, you measure it, and you learn, validated learning. Once you have learned, you know how to continue building it, continue measuring it, and continue learning. And that's how you are iterating and evolving and improving the product that you have. And this one you do together with your customers. And you want to have short iterations so you make sure that you are not wasting your time in things that your customers might not need. In the Lean Startup, Eric Ries also talks a lot about the different experiences that he has had within his own startup, but also other companies and how they have tried to overcome the problems over the years. One of the things that I like the most in the Lean Startup by Eric Ries is that he has a lot of experience within the startup world, the tech startup world, and he has been running his own startup but also consulting other startups out there. And he continues to do so. And it's also very interesting that he provides lots of examples, of real life examples of people that have been having these struggles and these problems that he's describing in the book and how they have been overcoming them. In some cases it's his own startup and his own struggles, and sometimes it's other people's struggles. And he talks a lot about people, especially those entrepreneurs in those big corporations, how they have been able to overcome the problems and situations that they have had. If you like this video and you have found it interesting, probably you have, since you have been all the way until now, you probably might like to see this video next, where I talk about the difference between an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur. I will see you in the next video, and remember, stay safe.